أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear respected brothers and sisters, I, Kaisar Galib Hossain, host of this program, would like to invite you to this program titled Food and Its Contribution to Health in Ramadan. It's a very honor for us to host this kind of program in the platform of at Happy Strong Family. And as usual, we have Dr. Zaihan Rashid as our esteemed speaker to present the topic, inshallah. So as a housekeeping notes, if you kindly mute yourself during the program, that would be highly appreciated. At the end of the program, we'll open up for Q&A session. And also, you will be able to send your questions in the chat section of Zoom, inshallah. That way we can get your question and get a better grasp of your concerns, inshallah. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Zaihan Rashid to start his presentation. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. I want to thank all of you for taking out some time of your day on a day of Ramadan, early part of the day. I also want to appreciate very much your desire to want to learn about the contribution of food. After all, for a lot of us, food is the main concern, deprivation of it or providing food. And because it has such a huge contribution to our health in general, Ramadan is just something I felt I see so many times, myself included, where a perfectly good opportunity to become better in terms of not just the physical self, but the spiritual self, the intellectual self. It's been lost because the impact of food has not been appreciated. So in this brief presentation, inshallah, about 40 to 45 minutes, I want to, inshallah, go over some of the things that I believe will affect our ability to have really a productive and a very powerful Ramadan, inshallah. So what do I mean? Well, first of all, let me show you quickly what Allah Ta'ala has said. And we know this every Ramadan. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Kutiba alaykum. Sorry, slide a little bit. So what this means is, first of all, I want to remember that Allah Ta'ala has told us that this is not a new thing. Fasting is something that was given to other nations. The Jewish people have fasting, as you know. The Christians have the Lent. So this is not something new. But the purpose of this also, therefore, has not changed. The purpose is that we become God-conscious people. We become closer to God. Now, God consciousness does not comprise of one single factor. I believe it comprises of several factors. And I think in myself that when we think about fasting and taqwa together, what is the words that come to our mind? I believe deprivation is for a lot of people, I'm deprived of food. I can't eat. I can't eat what I like to eat. And at least I can't eat it at the time that I want to eat. But in the other ayah, which I want to point, also from Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah Ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nasu kulu mimma fil ardi halalan tayyiban. So now Allah Ta'ala is saying, O people, eat from the earth what is both halal and pure. And the interesting part, and I presented these before, is that Allah Ta'ala is connecting shaitan somehow to this issue of food. It's quite amazing how food would have anything to do with shaitan. Not only that, but Allah Ta'ala is saying he actually is designated to oppose you. So he hasn't hidden his intention to fool you and to make you somebody who actually loses really the value of what Allah has offered. So halal and tayyib food should be great. There should be no reason why shaitan should be mentioned in this context, but it is being mentioned in this context. And that's why I believe that shaitan, being a smart enemy, recognizes I can only affect them if they start to use what is Allah Ta'ala's purpose behind all of this, meaning giving pure and halal food. How can they actually be destroyed? By doing something. So let's take it to the next step. Here we have been told that Allah's Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he said, whoever prayed at night in the month of Ramadan out of faith and hoping for a reward, then his previous sins will be forgiven. So now we have a very powerful context that in fact night prayer can really help us be forgiven. Now imagine for a minute that we have overeaten at iftar time, right? We have piled up all the fatty foods, the high sugared foods, the drinks, etc. And what they have done is they have effectively made me and you unable to function when the night time came. Which means what? Well, it starts with Taraweeh. We've all seen people, myself, all of us have experienced that there are people who are unable to stand and really enjoy the Quran being read in Taraweeh, whether they are hearing it, whether they're reading it themselves, whatever form it is. Why? Because there is something affecting their ability to concentrate. And I want you to think carefully to say, prayers at night have been mentioned specially as a means of being forgiven. And now imagine for a minute that this unhealthy food that I ate, not just unhealthy, the amount that I ate has made it impossible for me. If not impossible, definitely very difficult for me to really enjoy this Taraweeh, this recitation of the Quran. So it's an unfortunate start to Ramadan if I start doing that. I believe there are these challenges in Ramadan. Every Ramadan, these three things are a part of our problems. One of them is, as I mentioned, food. We're not going to talk about the other two, sleep and energy lack, etc., because they are secondary issues. They're not the primary issues. I believe the primary issue is food. And look at the food in the picture. If this is the food we are eating, we are more or less putting ourselves in that environment where it will be a challenge to stand at night, because this fatty food, this food full of refined sugars and starches, this will not make it possible for me to really be able to concentrate, especially if the amount is big also. And then that secondarily, because of the body has to digest whatever we're eating, it will affect our sleep. Once our sleep is not good, once our sleep is disrupted, once our sleep is not really restful sleep because of what I did to my body in the way of eating, it will affect my energy levels. Think about this being as a vicious cycle. One wrong step leads to several long steps as the day goes by and the night goes by too. So let's look at what actually happens. Well, the choices that we are making every day are affecting us. So when we take food that has too much salt, right? Not just salt that is added to the food while it is cooking, but even sometimes because people don't like, oh, there's not enough salt. But in fact, salt excess does not promote to the taste of the food. It actually simply promotes what is called the gluttony of food, right? I just enjoy food with a lot more salt. Well, enjoying food with a lot more salt has consequences. It has consequences. What do I mean? It dehydrates the body. Salt inevitably extracts water out of the cells. Salt inevitably will allow me and you to retain fluid in the body. And as we get older in years, this is really what will contribute to ill health such as high blood pressure and even heart disease for that matter. I think the other problem is, as you see in this slide very poignantly, that you see the typical food that is on our tables and look at the Prophet ﷺ's favorite foods. The melon, the fig, the olive, the honeys, the grapes, the dates, the mushrooms, and subhanAllah, what a sharp contrast to what the Prophet ﷺ liked and what a sharp contrast to what me and you are eating. So we have fewer fruits and vegetables. We have way too much processed food. I believe we have way too much processed food, and I'll go into the details of what I mean by processed food in a minute also. The Prophet ﷺ, as you know, said, no man fills a container worse than his stomach. Nobody can do more harm to themselves than by eating. Study after study now, this has become very well known as time has gone on, that people have looked at the factors that affect a person's health. So you could say age is a factor that most of us think about. Most of us would say some diseases are genetically more likely to happen in races, right? People say, my father had diabetes, my mother had high blood pressure. Definitely those factors will be there. But the bigger factor, subhanAllah, amazingly, is the food that we're putting in our stomach. So when you look at age, when you look at gender, and even when you look at physical activity, all three will pale in front of what you're eating. So if you looked at those four factors, food, physical activity, genetics, gender, the single predominant factor that decides ill health is food. That's how important, and that's why if you look at it in this context, you will see why the Prophet ﷺ said something so powerful 1400 years ago. He said, no man fills a container worse than his stomach. And look at this statement, a few morsels that keep his back upright are sufficient for him. You know what that means? It means none of us needs to eat more than a small amount of food. Now, what we get used to, what is culturally going on, what happens in a gathering when I go there, that's another issue altogether. I'm not really discussing that because that can really take us into all kinds of very uncomfortable areas to say, well, this is what I've always eaten. This is what I've liked when I was little. This is what brought me happiness. This is a comfort food. This is what I chew on when I'm stressed out. I'm not going into all that detail, but I'm saying the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who is the best guide for us, he points out something. He's not a nutritionist, he's not a dietitian, he's not qualified from a university, but he is qualified from the one that has created us. And he is saying this very powerful statement. He's saying a few morsels are enough to keep a person functioning. That's really what that means. Back upright means he's able to function. And if we must eat, and subhanAllah, this is really the part that comes in even more. So the relevant part is small portion. But if you must eat, meaning I simply can't give up, right? I can't keep a few morsels as enough. No problem. Now the Prophet ﷺ is giving another solution. Eat 1/3 solid food. Leave 1/3 for drink and leave 1/3 empty. Every time me and you are sitting to eat, we can just think of that as a principle that will help us pretty much all of our life. You don't even need to change it. It's true for children, it's true for adults, it's true for old adults, it's true for everybody, men, women. It doesn't matter which country you were born in, it doesn't matter, because this is a universal principle. And the moment food becomes like what we're seeing here, you are already on the road to some big troublesome problems. What is the problem with fast foods? The problem with fast foods is provided by two major factors. One is fats, which are mostly unsaturated fats, which are unhealthy to begin with. The other is refined sugar. All of these four products that you're seeing in this slide have them. So look at slide at the top, right? This is deep fried food with no concern of nutrition. Main concern is taste and energy. Taste being probably the predominant thing. So its appearance is good. It definitely smells good. Again, same thing on the slide on the right. Now you're seeing some fries. Now you're seeing some tomato ketchup. Now you're seeing it presented in a manner that's very enticing. But unfortunately, this is nothing but refined sugar, both in the fries and in the ketchup. Ketchup is laden with preservatives, and fries have been deep fried in fat, and we don't even know the changes that occur in the fat. Pizza, same thing. You're putting on unhealthy amounts of food, usually high amounts of salt, usually high amounts of refined sugar. Same problem with the middle slide when you look at donuts. Same problem with the slide right at the bottom left. Now you've got high fried fat. You've got a meat that has been basically raised on antibiotics and hormones, unfortunately. And then in there, you've put in two things just to balance it all out. But really, the overwhelming feeling is high amounts of unsaturated fat, high amounts of salt. So those are two harmful things. And on top of that is refined sugar. Now, I believe this is really a common error that we make when we are breaking fast. When we are sitting at the iftar table, we are breaking our fast with greasy foods. Instead, the recommendation, as you know, the Prophet ﷺ always broke his fast pretty much with dates or water. And there is a benefit. Let's take example number one, the fatty samosa, the fatty fried food that we ate along with some kind of preservative made condiment like ketchup or some other kind of things, right? So now the first thing is the samosa, which is what I've exemplified here because that's what most of the community seems to be using at iftar, is comprised of refined sugar, which is the flour that was used to prepare it. It has been laden with usually potatoes that are also not even really necessarily a vegetable, although it is classed as vegetable. What we've done with both of these things is we've removed the essence of it. So we've removed the peel of the potato, and we've taken out the husk of the flour. So we've left basically the essence, which is nutrition deprived, but which is energy based. And definitely taste is the big part of it. Definitely there are taste enhancers put in things like the ketchups and stuff like that, because they have to entice people. People are not going to come and eat these things if there's not enough taste in there. And the other thing is the relationship with happiness, because over a period of time, we've been doing this for many years, deep fried foods become a source of our happiness. We become convinced that these will create not just happiness, but they'll create comfort also. And remember, at the end of a long day of fasting, our ability to decide is pretty seriously affected. So we're not at that time really in a position to make good decisions to begin with. Why? Because we are in a situation where we have some serious decisions to make. And serious decisions mean that we have to decide, how do we go about eating? What should we eat? And unfortunately, when decision making is difficult, most of us revert back to what would be considered the default mechanism. Default mechanism is that we go back to what we are used to, what we've been doing for a long time. Let's look at the next slide. So, Ramadan, if we and you are going to function as people who will want energy all day, or at least energy during the better part of the day, if we want to stay well hydrated, if we want to really have wholesome food, because several challenges occur in the Ramadan time, right? We are eating at the two ends of the day. We are eating usually with a small amount of time, because iftar may be a little prolonged, but sahur definitely, the early morning meal definitely will be restricted for time for most people. Also, most people don't feel hungry at that time. So there's that factor as well. So that's why the food that is required, because we're eating not a big amount, we need to have good hydration provided. We need to have water provided through that food. We also want to have food that's looking tasty and good, so that we can't eat something and that we've been given some fruit that we don't really want to eat, but we can make it a presentable form of fruit. We can make it into fruit salad. We can put some honey on top of it. We can put some dates in it. We can dip the dates in milk, etc. And we can go into that, inshallah, also in detail. But my point here is there is no reason to think that we cannot eat healthy at suhoor and we cannot eat healthy at iftar, which is the evening break. We can use fruit as a sweet dish. We can use fresh bread. We can use brown bread. We can use fresh chapatis that is made of brown bread. We can even use things that have a slight coating of fat, but the primary contents will remain wholesome. And of course, like everything else, it doesn't develop overnight. If we're used to eating parathas and that's basically predominantly what our breakfast is, that it will take time to change over to something that is more healthier, more nutritious, and more wholesome. Again, some of those foods that I mentioned are not necessarily bad. It's just the amount that they're being used, and sadly, the fact that the second error I believe that occurs is we eat too quickly, most of us. The connection between the brain and the stomach is about 15 to 20 minutes lag time. So that if we eat too quickly, it will not really become apparent to our stomach that, to our brain rather, that our stomach is already full. This means that if you're eating faster than your brain can signal, you can end up eating a lot more than you really want. So think about this: eating quickly, eating the wrong food, eating in large amounts. All three things are harmful. So whereas if I cut it down and I ate slowly, so that I chewed my food, and it's not very enticing, because when at iftar time, particularly when 16, 17 hours of fasting has come by, it's not really very enticing to wait, right? The intention is for most of us, let's just grab and eat. And I'm saying, my brothers and sisters in Islam, please remember the lag time between the brain and the stomach is actually beneficial. Because when we chew, right, when we chew our food, when we taste our food, when we really reflect on the blessings of Allah Ta'ala, right? Even if you're eating a samosa, reflect for a minute, how did that samosa get there? How did this beautiful piece of date get here? How and what went on? Reflecting, just reflecting for a few minutes, because reflection is a very powerful way of changing behavior, right? Think about the last person who you thought, you know what, I don't want to be in those boots. I don't want to become sick. Well, what are you doing about it? What happens to that, if you like, belief when you're sitting for iftar? What happens to that belief when we are sitting? I mean, now we're of course restricted because there are no iftar parties, but really what happens to my beliefs about staying healthy when I have the opportunity and the food is there in plenty? And this is another thing, that there's so much food there, it's very difficult for people to stop. Error number 3, and I've mentioned 2 errors so far. One is we're eating the wrong kind of foods. Number 2, I'm saying that we're eating too quickly. Number 3, I believe, is that we are not drinking enough fluids, or we are not taking foods that would bring in water-rich foods. And these are some of the charts that I've made here. Tomato, for example, strawberries, watermelon, grapefruit, cantaloupe, peach, cranberries, oranges, pineapples, raspberries, apricots, blueberries. You can see the water content right there. You know, the other big advantage, these are obviously all the fruits, the vegetables are on the right. You can see the cucumbers, the lettuces, the celeries, the radishes, the zucchinis, the cabbages, the cauliflower, the eggplant. These might sound like I don't really enjoy. Well, this is the whole point. We need to change what we do in Ramadan so that we can enjoy the benefits of eating good. This is not just a taste issue, right? It's not just a taste issue. The issue is eating food in the wrong amount, in the speedy amount, and the wrong types actually affects our ability to have a good Ramadan. That's the whole point. So if I'm sleepy, right, because I've eaten so much at iftar, I can't keep my eyes open because I was deprived the whole day. Now I've dumped a whole amount of sugar and fat in my stomach. So of course the gut has to function, get rid of or absorb it. But if I ate slowly, wholesome food, I still would have filled myself up. I still would have had water-rich fruits. Fruits are very tasty. If we stop eating so much sugar, unfortunately, as we do, the mithais, the kheers, the ice creams, what have they done? They've messed up our taste buds. Our taste buds, once they are unfortunately affected, we don't like the taste of real food. We like the taste of foods that are actually harmful. I'm going to tell you in a minute how this sugary drinks, unfortunately, the Coca-Colas and the Coca-Colas and all these, and I'm not necessarily against any particular brand, but I'm saying the sodas in general. What are they? They are basically caffeinated high sugar drinks. That's what they are. And subhanallah, I was telling my friend that one day I was walking in the morning and it was day to collect garbage, but it was a very windy day and people's garbage was unfortunately flying on the street. And I couldn't believe the amount of empty pizza cartons that were flying around, the amount of sugary drink cartons, empty drinks, of course, that were flying around, the amount of, things that are really contained in containers, like I was mentioning donuts, etc. So subhanallah, refined sugar, refined sugary drinks, unhealthy fat, unhealthy sugars, and we have a huge illness, disease like COVID-19 around, which should mean we should think about our immunity in a big way. Washing our hands is great, staying isolated is great, but the immunity that we all have is the one that's going to protect me with Allah Ta'ala's help, of course. And how does that immunity get built up? It doesn't get built up if we are missing sahur. Definitely not. Unfortunately, there are people who miss sahur, sahri. They miss it. And why? Because they can't be bothered getting up at that time. They're too tired. And again, that's a result of, unfortunately, not balancing this thing. That's why I said right at the beginning, for those of you who are from the beginning, that food affects our sleep and food affects our ability to stay active during the day. So it's not some minor matter that one can say, one can just kind of eat whatever you like. And no, it will actually affect your ability to function during the next day. It will affect your ability to stay awake during Taraweeh. It will affect your ability to concentrate on whatever you want to do. If you want to be a functional person, you have to think carefully about eating sahur. You must eat. There's a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to begin with. The Prophet ﷺ said this nation is distinguished by the fact that we eat sahur. And he ate the sahur. The sunnah of sahur is, sahri is to delay it. Sunnah of iftar is to encourage early iftar, very early iftar. And sahur is what? And it's actually a breakfast. And many studies, so many studies have actually shown us that healthy breakfast produces tremendous physical and mental benefits, which leave us feeling good for most of the day. Imagine feeling good and imagine being able to do our normal day, right? Imagine being able to say, I ate a beautiful, lightly fried zucchini. I ate some fresh cucumbers. I ate strawberries and peach. I ate some breadfruit. I ate some celery and brown. You know, you can take your pick. You don't have to take these picks. But these things are very, very strong when it comes to looking at the foods that are actually healthy. And I want to point out, subhanAllah, nutrition requirements normally, I'm sorry, the slide is a bit faded and not so clear, but it's pointing out the average daily consumption necessary for men who are sedentary is about 2,500 calories, and for sisters, women, it's about 2,100 calories. It's only for the moderate and the very active people that the calorie requirement goes up. And because of the sedentary lifestyle, because of all the gadgets that we have, right? Gadgets are opening our car, gadgets are warming our car, gadgets are lighting our, our stoves, gadgets are pretty much heating our food, gadgets are running our televisions, our cell phones, our computer, everything is gadgeted. So with the result that most of us, unfortunately, have fallen into a sedentary category of people. So it's a very serious problem. You have to think carefully of how much calories do I need to give my body, right? Whether I'm fasting or not. And this has become an attitude, right? It's an attitude that most people think, like this cartoon says, how much longer do I have before I have to change to a healthy lifestyle? And people wait to become unwell before they will do something about it. This is not a smart way of thinking. Ramadan is a very smart way of, you all know about intermittent fasting. I'll mention it briefly in a few minutes. The Prophet said the stomach is the pond of the body. All blood vessels are fueled by the stomach. When the stomach is healthy, the blood vessels transport the good health throughout the body. And when the stomach is unhealthy, the blood vessels transport the cell health throughout the body. Very, very powerful statement. Very powerful statement. Now, how do you avoid dehydration? Well, first of all, think carefully of what you're eating. And this is a very busy slide. I don't expect you to remember it all. But I'm saying pretty much you will find that fresh fruits and vegetables will take the top role of water content being high. So look at the bananas, look at the tomatoes, the beans, the beets, the bell peppers, the broccoli, the cauliflower. You have a whole range of choices, right? Then come down to bagels and breads and cheese. Look at how water content falls drastically. Look at the brownies, cookies, energy bar sector. Virtually no water. So when we are trying to make up water content, that's why I said at the beginning that dehydration is a big part of how you feel during the day. If the body is not hydrated well, you'll feel tired. You'll feel sleepy. You'll feel non-functional. You'll become even irritated, unfortunately, and sometimes even annoyed. Now, this goes on when you go on to other fruits. These includes the apples, the grapes, the kiwi fruit, the pears, yogurt is an excellent. If you want to use yogurt, you can. But I'm saying you can see how breakfast cereals, candy bars, chocolate, crackers, and potato chips come down to. They come down, in some case, almost to no water at all. So imagine if this is what your sahur is, that you're putting a bunch of breakfast cereal in front of yourself and your other family members, you're depriving them of some very valuable watery content. Of course, overeating, we've already talked about. It's a huge part of how we become sick. Now, what does actually fasting do? I'm not going to discuss the whole physiological change of fasting, but fasting, as you can see on the top left, it says is natural nutrition therapy. It promotes detoxification. It actually breaks down the fats that are particularly around the abdomen, mobilizes and eliminates some stored toxins. Now, if those of us who are in the bad habits of such as smoking, etc., or some other addictions, it's an excellent time to break habits. Science and psychology in particular has told us that about 21 days are needed to break or adapt a new habit. So it's an excellent time to get up early in the morning. Excellent time to start wholesome eating in the morning. Excellent time to do some reading of the Quran. Excellent time to go for Fajr Salah. And you can take this on wherever you like. It corrects blood pressure. It reduces without any drugs. It also, if you have been, and as I was saying earlier, eating the wrong food means that our taste buds are badly paralyzed. We don't even like good food anymore. Why? Because unfortunately the taste buds have been eating the wrong thing for too long. So they don't like the natural foods anymore. They actually like these artificially stimulated chemical produced tastes much, because that's what chemicals can do. Similarly, people who have other things, like people have constipation issues, people have bloating issues, people have heartburn issues. My brothers and sisters, and all of this, pretty much 95% of it is related to the food that you're putting in your body. Please think carefully. Look at even irritable bowel syndrome. Uh, Enhancing mental acuity. You actually become sharper people. You actually think better by fasting. How many of us think fasting like that? Most of us think, oh, fasting is going to be too difficult for me. How can I function? I've heard from people, I can't play my games. I can't really do projects in Ramadan. I find it so tiring. My brothers and sisters, primarily, if not the main reason of this, is the bad food that you're doing and I'm doing. Unfortunately, people don't easily want to change, and inshallah they can do. Ramadan is excellent proof that we can change, but we don't want to change because we have all these excuses. I can't, I can't be bothered preparing healthy meals. I doubt I can change. I've been doing this for too long. Think of a sick person and how much money they spend when they get sick. And we've heard of this COVID virus a lot in the last 4 weeks, right? How much have we had a chance to hear that immunity is affected, our immunity to fight this virus? Of course, Allah Ta'ala is the primary motivator, is the primary mover, is the one that makes the decision. But I'm saying Allah has given us the ability to eat healthy foods, right? Allah has given us vegetables. Allah has given us oats. Allah Ta'ala has given us leafy greens. Allah Ta'ala has given us, I mean, we don't like the word Galib because it has a smell, but it actually is one of the immune modulators. And so we can add garlic if we don't like the garlic the way it's presented, the raw garlic, but it can be added to our cooked vegetables in particularly. And this is up to us how we want to change what we've been doing for 30, 25 years, whatever it is that we're doing, right? But this is really what a healthy food plate should look like. There is proteinaceous foods that you can use, definitely quinoa. We talked about not quinoa necessarily today, but available of protein availability is more than just meat. Protein is available in many grains as well. Quinoa is one of them. Protein is also available in many vegetables. So that's why when you take fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, you add a bit of grain, you take a small amount of meat, you make sure that water is being drunk, you actually have an excellent platter of healthy food. And that will actually make you not only energy full, but will actually make you function much better. This is a Canada Health Guide website. You can look it up if you like. It's called Food Guide, Canada Food Guide. They've actually put out now healthy recipes. And I've just copied one of them to say, if you have difficulty to decide what is healthy, I don't know how to eat healthy, well, go on to one of these websites and figure out if you really want to. And there are other, particularly, if you can look up, this is foods that boost your immune system. You can add this to food that you already eat. Things like ginger are quite easy. Things like green tea, pomegranate, broccoli, spinach, sweet potato, low-fat yogurt. Things that can be easily done. Maybe elderberry, maybe acai berry is not so easy, but definitely ginger and garlic should be easy. Definitely broccoli, spinach, watermelon, pomegranate. If you're scared of getting one of these viruses, how about improving your diet, right? You have things like brown rice, quinoa, whole wheat, give you much more fiber, don't spike your blood sugar. And you know what? One of the reasons people overeat it, because we are taking foods that don't fill our stomach. The sense of satiety is not there. That's why people put so much food that's actually high in energy, because you have to eat 4 naans or 3 naans before you feel full. You have to eat 4 or 6 samosas before you'll feel full. But if you actually took something that is already fiber rich, tasty, already has got protein and carbohydrate, and excellent taste, please believe me, taste can be so good with these things. But the major reasons why we don't easily find these changes is because we've become used to, unfortunately, foods that are sadly being sometimes comfort food, right? And people eat what? When they're stressed out, they don't go and eat broccoli. They munch on chocolate. They munch on ice cream, because this gives you that quick feeling of happiness. But it's not because they're creating happiness. It's because there is a psychological link with food that we've been eating for a long time. We have associated, children who've been eating pizza in wherever they went, right? They were given pizza. So they have related pizza with happiness. Birthdays came, pizza got given. They went to a gathering, pizza got given. Ice cream was followed, kulfi was followed, samosa was followed. So the mind starts to associate happiness with those foods. Yet those foods, sadly, are sometimes the most harmful foods. And then, white bread, white potatoes, white rice, pastries, of course they boost blood sugar, but they do it very, very quickly. So if you can imagine, something gives you a smooth rise of blood sugar so that you actually are satiated quickly, and you are actually eating healthy, and you actually stay full longer. But the other foods, when you bring in pizza, when you bring in samosa, when you bring in donuts, when you bring in hamburger, these things also make you feel full, but the fullness doesn't last. And the disadvantage is that the amount of energy that you and me are getting are actually not healthy. So this is really what, and they're also high in salt sources. So pizzas, biryani, samosas, cooked hotel restaurant, they're usually high in salt. Processed meats, hot dogs, lunch meats, also same thing. Canned soups, bottle dressings, particularly this apply to ketchups and pickles. We have to be very aware of what we are putting in our bodies, because those things will have consequences. Potato chips, crackers, etc. Same thing. And this, unfortunately, is how sweets are. That we have decided cookies, cakes, and muffins, they really should not be eaten the way we are eating them. They are loaded with added sugar, which causes weight gain. They cause increase in fat levels, and they can actually lead to diabetes and heart attack. And then white flour, same thing. The more white bread you're eating, the more you're increasing your blood sugar. It actually makes you hungrier early also. So I'm suggesting swap whole wheat flour, trim the sugar, use liquid plant oils instead of shortening, etc. This thing I put there because I think people don't realize how much it can affect your stress level even. How much foods can actually affect your mood. It literally translates that whatever is slow releasing, whatever is bringing out a healthy, if you like, circulation of insulin, whatever is allowing you to have more a chance to bear slowly, which means sugar is released slowly versus sugar is released quickly. There's a big difference between the two situations. And I'll just put this there so you can leave your. I'll give you a minute to look at this quickly. And don't worry about the liquor part. This is obviously we don't use liquor, alhamdulillah. But look at the Coca-Colas, look at the French fries, look at the sugary cereals, the cotton candy, the burgers, the Burger King hash browns, the cake. These are all foods that are actually scientifically shown to make you depressed. They actually make you stressed and depressed. On the other hand, look at the chia seeds, the asparagus, the blueberries, the coconuts, the walnuts, the avocado, the spinach, the grapefruit. They're all, I mean, not all of these necessarily will be, but I'm saying, can we add these to our diets? I think we can. I think we can. I think we should. And also, funnily enough, these foods actually affect your ability to think optimistic also. There is so much science out there now that people who expose themselves to foods that create high spikes of sugars actually become depressed easily. And if that's combined with watching all the negativity that's come out of the news, you can imagine how bad a combination that is. So the other thing is, when we fast, what is the big advantage of fasting? Well, the big advantage of fasting is that you actually eat less. At least me and you should eat less. Right? We should not eat more in Ramadan. We should not say, oh, when evening comes, I need to make up for the food that I didn't eat. No, no. This is a very, very unfortunate way of thinking. The idea is you reduce your intake, you maintain a smooth state of semi-hunger during the daytime. You will find that your focus clears. You will find that you become more energetic. You actually become more functioning if you just stop thinking so much about food. And also give yourself foods that last longer in your body, right? They actually stay and give you a steady release of sugar. A lot of this situation is occurring because we are eating fast foods. We are eating foods that are releasing a lot of sugar. We're eating foods that are allowing, sadly, very little, if you like, nutrition. A lot of energy, but very little nutrition. So when we do that, we don't allow our body to adjust by curbing your appetite, which is what will happen, right? In the first few days, most people will know we feel very bad because most of us, sadly, have not done intermittent fasting like the Prophet ﷺ. Prophet ﷺ used to fast. He used to fast Mondays and Thursdays. He used to fast 13th, 14th, 15th of the lunar month. If that is the case with somebody during the whole year, the month of Ramadan actually is simply, if you like, the cherry on the top. They don't really have a huge effect because they've been already doing it. Our problem, sadly, is the majority of us is we don't fast regularly. We don't detoxify our bodies. We don't allow our bodies to regain their strength. You know what's happening when you are fasting? Your body is literally thanking you. It's thanking you for allowing it to heal. It's allowing you, it's literally, I mean, this is really what the worst offenders are. Look at this for a minute and just see for yourself how these things actually cause harm to your body by increasing your blood sugar, by increasing your blood pressure, by increasing your body fat, by decreasing your nutritious elements, by actually causing lining of your arteries with this fatty material. The top right one where you see the strawberries actually are the smoothies that some of us are very fond of. Smoothies are fine if they're used in moderation, but if you start a smoothie diet, that's a lot of sugar that you're putting into the body. And sugar in high amounts almost never is of any value, particularly sugar that's coming from pure sources, from refined sources. These are some of the healthy foods. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with them. Chia seeds, you have the pomegranates, you have the cheddar cheese, you have the things like quinoa, you have other, so these example, brown rice, etc. The benefit of these is that they have antioxidants in them. They have, if you like, certain fibrous, they have fiber, definitely they have fiber. But the biggest advantage is some of them actually have the ability to wrap up, to clean up all the toxic food that we eat normally. So they're actually cleaners of the body. They're actually also providers of fibrous, if you like, fiber to the body. So in Ramadan, constipation becomes very common for people because there are long periods of not eating, there are periods of dehydration, there are periods where people are not really getting enough nutrition, etc. And certainly they are eating so much sometimes that they don't really allow the body to evacuate so well. And then the sleeping hours are affected, activity patterns are affected, so the gut is inevitably affected as well. Intermittent fasting, and this is, I think, one of the last slides. This is science now, intermittent dry fasting. Dry fasting means we don't drink water at all during the day. We actually fast completely. That's called dry fasting. But there's a type of fasting called wet fasting because of the intermittent fasting fad that has come in the last few years. This actually was taken by a fasting website where somebody who I respect very much has said that this is dry fasting is the best approach because it lets you reap the health benefits of the fast without endangering your health. And this is really what happens. When we have a fed state, our insulin levels are high. This is a hormone that is released in the body in response to glucose. We burn glucose very much. We store fat. But when we are fasting, we actually do all the opposite. We actually burn the fat, we liberate, we actually have low glucose, and our insulin levels are low too. Just to review all of this quickly, healthy eating will strengthen your physical as well as your spiritual health. You always, if you have a plan in place, and I recommend all of you, if you've not already put a plan, put a plan. You want to know what you're eating at Suhoor, you want to know what you're eating at Iftar. Broadly, I'm not saying it has to be 100 out of 100, but I'm saying 70 to 80 things should be well decided. Common errors, 4 things. Eating quickly, eating fatty and salty and sugary, high sugary refined foods, eating, unfortunately, foods that are refined foods, not really wholesome foods, and lastly, dehydration, chronic dehydration. So we're drinking sugary drinks, we're drinking coffee, we're drinking tea. I'm not saying these things cannot be, they can be, but really water is what needs to be placed as the top of the list of things that need to be replaced in the body, because all of you, me and myself and you, all of us are 60-70% water. So when we don't replace water, a chronic state of dehydration occurs, and that does create tiredness, that does create difficulty in concentration. That's what creates the sleepiness in the early part, and sometimes for people most part of the day. People just can't function, and they don't realize fasting was never put into place so that we become unfunctional, unproductive people. That is not how Allah Ta'ala has planned us to live our lives. So the last part I want to mention is, let us make an intention to change for the sake of Allah. Let us not say, oh, I can't do this, it's too much, I've been doing what I've been doing for too long. Let's not wait for results. Remember, the Muslim nation is very poor when it comes to our performance with the illnesses, the diabetes, the high blood pressure, the heart disease. Really, all the major Western lifestyle diseases seem to be very high, 2 to 3 times higher in Muslims compared to the populations that we live with. So, inshallah, with this I stop. I'm happy to take any questions and any concerns that people have from what I presented. Jazakallah khair for your patience. I'm happy to take any questions, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Zaihan Rashid, for the very beneficial presentation. So I'd like to invite everyone to ask questions. So I'm going to unmute everyone, inshallah. And meanwhile, I'd like to request to raise hands if you can. Within the Zoom, it's possible to raise hands so that I can make an order. Otherwise, if you don't have any questions, please mute yourself. If you have questions, then if you kindly raise your hands, and then I can understand you have the question. And also you can send your question via chat. So yeah, I'd like to open up the question floor at this point of time. So anyone?
Question मैं टाइप कर दिया तो मैं टाइप कर जल्दी प्लीज जरा एंगेज करिए बोलो जल्दी जल्दी
Anyone have any question? I can hear someone talking. Brother, do you have any question? Okay, while waiting, I can ask a question to Dr. Rashid. Dr. Rashid, I can remember one verse from Quran where you showed us that there's a mentioning of having or eating pure or tayyib food, pure food, and in the same verse, there's a mentioning of not following footsteps of shaitan. So how you can connect this eating pure food and not following shaitan? If you kindly shed some words on this. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah khair. The relevance of this verse dawned on me as I researched the project of food and how food affects a person's life. I believe shaitan's mission is to distract us from the ibadah of Allah. I believe that shaitan has been created as a permanent enemy, and I believe that shaitan does not hide his intentions to harm us. Not physically, not mentally, not spiritually. I think shaitan's intentions have been known from day one. That's why I believe Allah has called him Aduwwun Mubin. He's an open, declared enemy. That being the case, I think all of us need to reflect carefully on how the not eating of halal and tayyib food can affect us. Many years ago, the issue of halal food rose when people, there was a certain amount of dislike for Islamic practices in certain countries that were not aware of what halal is. And people started to investigate halal. Halal really, as you all know, when it comes to halal meat, for example, is that the animal is bled so that all the blood leaves the body. And it's only to be expected that research and investigation was done into what happens when meat is not deprived of its blood, which means the animal was killed in a method but didn't allow all the blood to leave its body before it died. If the heart stops pumping, the blood doesn't leave the body anymore. So it was then established that blood is the source of a lot of illnesses, a lot of, if you like, diseases. So that being the case, that practice of non-halal food actually promoted disease. And I connected disease as a desire that shaitan pursues. To say physical disease does what? Imagine somebody becomes physically unwell. May Allah protect all of us. Ameen ya Rab. But the point is, when physical illness occurs, most of us attribute it to what? Bad luck, genetics maybe. Very few of us, I think carefully to say, I have actually brought it upon myself. I maybe didn't think about it. Maybe I didn't really consider this to be a factor because I was busy with other things, etc. But shaitan, being the smart enemy that he is, he will use every tactic available. I'm not giving this as a fatwa. This is just my naqis, my simple understanding that Allah has connected these two things. Ya ayyuhan nasu kulu mimma. Allah Ta'ala says, "O you who, O people, eat what is halal and tayyib." And he's immediately followed that by saying, don't follow wala tattabi'u khutuwat shaitan. Don't follow the footsteps of shaitan. So I personally, and I've spoken to a few scholars on this topic also, that the link is very, very clear that unhealthy food, unhalal food has consequences that lead to disobedience of Allah. May Allah protect all of us. How does that imply? I believe unhealthy food stops us from doing ibadah of Allah. I believe eating a big meal in the evening before I go to bed without digesting it, eating food that is high in content that is clearly not tayyib, has an effect on my ability to stand up at Fajr time, has an ability on my ability to get up at Fajr time and do all the khair that comes. The Prophet ﷺ, as you know, has said, khair, the good is being placed in the early part of my day, of the day from my ummah. Now, imagine that most of the ummah, for some reason, doesn't seem to realize that's the case on Saturday and Sunday also. So we can get up for work, okay, no problem. But when it comes to Saturdays and Sundays, when we don't have to go to work, we seem to think that there's no obligation to get up. So I believe those things are contributed in a big way by the food that we are eating. I do believe that the drinks we are putting down our throats, and there are drinks that have high amount of sugar. I've mentioned some of them already, carbonated soda, some of these what are called real food drinks, and people are so easily fooled. Unfortunately, it's almost unbelievable that people don't realize how powerful an effect the amount and the kind of foods that we're eating has on our bodies. And may Allah Ta'ala make it easy for all of us. This is my simple understanding, that bad decisions about food and drinks will affect our ability to be good slaves of Allah, and will unfortunately encourage our following ways that shaitan is only happy. And Allah knows best.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab. Mashallah,
Salam.
very useful session. Jazakallah khair, as always. Just a quick question. Generally, especially with the South Asian community, as soon as they break the fast, there's a tendency of drinking extremely cold water or with roux afza and all that. But can you please, share with us the impact of, consuming cold drinks right after breaking the fast?
Jazakallah khair, Brother Nasir. So like everything else, although food can be and is eaten, of course, hot and not so hot, but the reality is that our insides, our temperature is about the same temperature as if when you take your own temperature. For example, when we were worried about COVID virus, some of us were checking our temperatures every day. Our temperature is checked by placing a thermometer under the tongue. It can also be taken by placing it under the armpit, etc. But the point is, that's the core temperature. So our insides functions best when the core temperature is close to what the body was meant to maintain, which is about 36.8 or 37 degrees Celsius, or 98 for the people who follow the Fahrenheit. So that being the case, cold water. Now imagine that cold water is either at 2 or 3 degrees Celsius, or maybe even cooler, depending whether we're drinking ice drinks, then that might be close to 0 even. So when you and I drink cold drinks, that nature, it could be cold milk also. It doesn't have to be cold water. It could be cold roux afza, as you mentioned. So roux afza has now 2 disadvantages in that sense of the word. Nothing against roux afza. I'm just giving examples. It's an example only. Any drink which has high amount of sugar, and that's really what most of these drinks are. They have high amounts of sucrose. They have high amounts of, if you like, they have preservatives also. But primarily what they're doing is they're promoting the taste bud benefit. The cold water literally paralyzes your insides. It stops you from functioning those enzymes that would help you digest your food. So my recommendation is, if you have to drink sugary drinks, please don't drink them right with your meal. Put them a little bit apart from your main meal. Either drink them before or drink them 10 to 15 minutes after. And the reason, not only will you not dilute the enzymes that will help you digest the food, which would have stopped the things like acidity, for example, bloating feeling, lot of burping. All of that happens because we are drinking and eating all at the same time in rapidity. So by itself, warmer water, or if you have to drink cold water, then don't place it right next to the eating food part. So 10 minutes before or 10 minutes after. So I hope, inshallah, that answers the question.
Jazakallah khairan, Dr.
Jazakallah khair.
Yeah, inshallah.
Any other question from the audience? I think some brothers are on mute. If you are talking, if you kindly unmute yourself and maybe ask the question, because food is very, very important part and person, of our life. I think it's an opportunity to have Dr. Rashid to clarify your question, especially he has like in-depth understanding from the medical background. Alhamdulillah, mashallah. And he has
I
been,
just want to add something else, that the food should not be an issue that's confined to Ramadan only. I'm hoping, like you and all of us, that we adopt lifelong habits. By the way, I do believe our children deserve the best treatment that we can give them. So if we adopt good eating habits, if we place fruits and vegetables in front of our children from the beginning, children will not become picky eaters. A lot of people became picky eaters because their parents didn't really, unfortunately, encourage them. Or the other part of it is, I believe, the heavy duty advertisement that goes into some of the comfort foods that we talked about. They're advertised in a big way. They are really given highlights in a lot of ways, both on our screens and sometimes even, like I say, when we go out, we frequent these places. So people who eat out also in many ways encourage their children to eat high fat, high salt, and high refined sugar foods. So there's a lot of disadvantage that comes in early years, because as I said right at the beginning of the presentation, comfort and happiness can be linked with food without us even realizing it. That is not just a taste. I actually related to all the times that I used to be a teenager. I used to go out with my college friends. I used to go with my buddies. We used to eat as a young. Those things can also become a big part of this whole thing. So I'm not suggesting to anybody that they change their pattern tomorrow, but I'm saying please consider carefully that Ramadan is a beautiful opportunity to start a wonderful change. It's not expensive, by the way, as I said right at the beginning. It's not impossible. Actually, when you look at the amount of money that people spend on medications once they get sick, and may Allah protect all of you, that amount is not small. To go for major surgery is not a simple matter. It is life-threatening in many cases. And there are many illnesses that don't have any surgery. Strokes, high blood pressure, etc. You cannot really treat them in any way. All you can do is give people pills. Whereas a little amount of research will show you that most of these illnesses are actually preventable simply by looking at what you are eating. I hope, inshallah, that is some motivation for all of you, myself included, before we finish and go home, inshallah.
yes, Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Rashid. It's a great word. So we have only actually about a minute. So I'd like to request our audience to visit our Facebook page and also our YouTube channel. I'd like to just show you. I'm sharing my screen. So this is our Facebook, YouTube channel. So our videos are already uploaded. Inshallah, this video will also be uploaded into this channel. And there are different playlists. If you look at, there are playlists on Ramadan tips, playlists on parenting, mental health, emotional health, dua tips, health tips, and also these other marriage tips too. So inshallah, you'll be able to see all these videos and benefit it, inshallah. And also please subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking the bell button. So I think this is the way you can subscribe. I can share. This is the one. And subscribe, inshallah. And also please also visit our Facebook page. Inshallah, you can also see different videos here, and also our website. And inshallah, we are also accepting donations to increase this beneficial work and produce more quality videos, inshallah. So there are donate page on our website. So there are options to give donation, inshallah. So please consider that. And we are also working towards set up Islamic media and studio, inshallah, very soon. So I would like to request to consider for this donation opportunity, so that you can be also part of this journey and part of the Sadaqah Jariyah, inshallah. So Jazakallah khairan. Thank you so much, everyone, for being part of this. Inshallah, our next events will be posted on our website, our Facebook, inshallah, and also YouTube channel, inshallah. If you don't have any other question, I'd like to call like an end to this session, inshallah, and make dua. Jazakumullah khairan, and have a happy Ramadan, and make dua for us, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.